You know, we've all heard the story of David versus Goliath. But what if the slingshot was the law itself? And what if Goliath wasn't a giant, but a massive, sprawling financial system? Well, today we're going to dive into one homeowner's absolutely incredible fight against what he calls a foreclosure machine. And the craziest part? His whole case, everything, hinged on a single, seemingly impossible number. So that really is the question, isn't it? I mean, how do you even begin to win a game that feels like it's rigged from the very start? Picture this. It's just you, by yourself, up against a whole team of high-powered corporate lawyers. How in the world do you make that a fair fight? Well, in this story, the answer was a mix of, let's say, desperation, some serious ingenuity, and one little clue that started to pull the whole thing apart at the seams. And here it is. This is that clue. Now, when you're talking about a foreclosure auction, a number like this, it's not just a price tag. No, it's way more than that. It's a piece of evidence. It is the key that unlocked this entire wild story. Okay, so let's break this down. This was the final winning bid for a house at a foreclosure auction. But here's the kicker. The winner showed up with a check, already printed for this exact amount, down to the penny. I mean, think about that. At a public auction, nobody knows the final price until the very last bid is in. So how on earth did they have a check ready to go for the perfect amount? It's like showing up to a marathon with a medal that has the winning time already engraved on it. It just screams that the winner knew the outcome before the race even began. Right. So that leads to the big question. How did this homeowner, a guy named Jeremy Bass, even end up in foreclosure in the first place? To really get what happened at that, let's call it a suspicious auction, we've got to rewind the tape a bit. We have to look at the company that was handling his loan, because that's where this whole story of alleged misconduct and pressure really kicks off. Okay, and just so we're all on the same page here, what's a loan servicer? It's basically the company you send your mortgage payment to every month. They're kind of the middleman between you and whoever actually owns your loan. And in this story, that servicer was a company called Carrington Mortgage Services, or CMS for short. Now, according to Jeremy Bass, this whole thing wasn't just a simple case of him falling behind on his payments. Oh no. He claims that back in late 2019, CMS sent him new loan documents, but they were backdated by 7 years, and his ex-wife's name was on them. When he, questioned this, he says they offered him $100, like a bribe, to just sign them. On top of that, he says they messed with his COVID forbearance, stretching it out way past the legal limit, all while using these weird modifications to pile on more debt. He basically argues they manufactured this foreclosure from the get-go. And this is the crucial part right here. For Bass, this wasn't just some mix-up or a typo. He was afraid he was being pushed into committing mortgage fraud, so he refused to sign. And that decision, that refusal to be a part of what he saw as totally illegal, is what he says put him on a collision course with this company, and ultimately led to this massive fight for his house. Okay, so this is where the story just blows wide open. Bass starts digging, he's looking into the companies that bought his house at that bizarre auction, and what he finds is, well, it's not just about him. He realizes his case might not be a one-off. In fact, he starts to believe he's stumbled onto a huge, coordinated operation that spans multiple states. Yeah, he starts pulling up other foreclosure records, and a really strange pattern starts to emerge. The same names just kept popping up, over and over again. You have the same group of companies, represented by the very same law firm, and, get this, in a lot of these cases, that law firm was playing the role of the trustee, the supposedly neutral third party overseeing the sale, while at the same time representing the company that was buying the property. I mean, talk about a conflict of interest. So let's lay out the key players here. You've got the law firm, Holliday, Watkins and Mann. We'll call them HWM. They're acting as the trustee and the lawyer for the buyers. And who are the buyers? 2 companies, DPW Enterprises and Mountain Prime 2018. And this trio, HWM, DPW, and Mountain Prime, they show up together in foreclosure sales in state after state. It definitely raises some serious questions, right? It just smells fishy. And it wasn't just Bass who thought this was weird. Forensic analysts actually looked at the data, and they came to a pretty startling conclusion. They said this pattern of these exact companies winning these auctions over and over wasn't just a coincidence. Their words were statistically impossible. I mean, wow, that gives some serious weight to this whole idea that Bass wasn't just fighting a single bad foreclosure. He was up against a well-oiled foreclosure machine. All right, so you're one guy and you're up against what looks like an unbeatable system. What do? Well, this is where Jeremy Bass gets really, really clever. He didn't just fight back. Oh no, he built like a legal fortress around his home. It's pretty brilliant, actually. And you have to remember, this is so important. Bass did all of this by himself. He was what's called a pro se litigant, which is just a fancy legal term for someone who represents themselves in court without a lawyer. So here he is, just one guy, going toe-to-toe with these experienced corporate attorneys. It makes what he pulled off even more incredible. So what was his big move? He created something that people are now calling the tenant shield. Here's how it worked. Step 1. He signed a totally legitimate lease agreement with a tenant for a part of his house. Step 2. That lease legally established that the tenant had a right to be there. And step 3. This is the genius part. By having a legal tenant, he triggered a federal law called the Protecting Tenants at Foreclosure Act. This law basically says that if a property gets foreclosed on, the new owner has to honor any existing leases. They can't just come in and kick everybody out. It completely changes the game. Yeah, as one legal strategist pointed out, the whole corporate playbook is designed to just wear you down. They assume you'll eventually give up, right? But Bass, he completely flipped the script. He built his own legal maze, a labyrinth of rules and obligations that the new corporate owners now had to deal with. He took their biggest weapon, the insane complexity of the law, and turned it right back against them. But even with this brilliant strategy, the fight was always going to end up in a courtroom. And that's where Boss hit a totally different kind of wall. This one wasn't made of laws or statutes. It was made of procedure, of tradition, of the culture of the court itself. Okay, what you're about to hear might be the most shocking moment in this entire story. This quote comes from Ken Nagy, the lawyer for the other side. This is the opposing counsel, and listen to what he says. I think Mr. Bass made a very logical and sound argument, but he didn't make it in the typical way that attorneys would argue it. I mean, just let that sink in. He's admitting right there in court that Bass's arguments made perfect sense. The problem wasn't what he was saying, but how he was saying it. And that statement, man, it just reveals so much about our legal system, doesn't it? It suggests a system where just being right or having a logical argument isn't enough. It's about knowing the secret handshake, speaking the special language of the law. If you don't have an expensive lawyer to act as your translator, it feels like your perfectly logical points might just get lost in translation. They might not even be heard at all. So why should we care about this one fight in one house in Idaho? What does it really matter? Because this whole story, when you peel it all back, it isn't just about legal loopholes or complicated contracts. It's about something way more fundamental. It's about what a home really means and the massive, massive imbalance of power when that home is on the line. And, this quote from Jeremy Bass himself just cuts right to the heart of it all. He said, "This is the first house I've ever really lived in. I'd gone to 13 different schools since kindergarten. Not a military family, just a broken home. That's why I can't let them steal the symbol that I broke the cycle." For him, this house wasn't just an investment. It was everything. After a really unstable childhood, it was the one solid thing that proved he'd built a better life. And that just lays the imbalance bare, doesn't it? When a homeowner loses their house, it's a profound personal crisis. It's emotional trauma. It destabilizes their entire family. But for a giant corporation, it's just an accounting entry, a calculated risk, a line item on a spreadsheet that they can probably write off on their taxes. The two sides aren't even playing the same sport. They're on different planets. So that brings us to the final lingering question. This case is actually still going on, but it really forces us all to ask, what happens when the system is so complicated and the power is so out of balance that making a logical and sound argument just isn't enough? What does that really cost us as a society? What's the price we all pay for a game where the house, in this case quite literally, always seems to win?